In this video, I'm going to show you how I learned to astral project in one day and how you can too. Coming up. What's up everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Aaron, and if you're new here, welcome. It's great to have you. We're gonna get straight into it because I'm sure that you're watching this video because you want to learn how to astral project. And you probably saw this video title and thought to yourself, cool, another clickbait title. Nobody can learn to astral project in one day. You think I was born yesterday, bro? And while I understand your skepticism, to that I say, yes. Absolutely yes, you can learn to astral project in one day. And in fact, you astral project every single night when you go to sleep. If you're somebody who is a frequent dreamer, then you're already amazing at this because a dream is a form of astral projection. I'm not gonna get too deep into what astral projection is in this episode. I'm gonna save that for later episodes. Today, we're gonna simply talk about how to do it. But that being said, there is a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about what astral projection actually is. And so the simplest definition I can give you is anytime you project your consciousness into another dimension, you are astral projecting. So when you dream at night, that is an astral projection. The only difference is you are not consciously aware that you are projecting. The only difference is that we need to learn how to either stay conscious or become conscious during this process. And I'm gonna take you through exactly how I do that. So I had my first consciously induced astral projection about 6 years ago. I was just getting into spirituality and I was doing a lot of reading and researching online about meditation. And one night I came across a forum board where people were talking about experiences of lucid dreaming and astral projection. And I was absolutely amazed by this because I had never heard of this anywhere before. They were describing their experiences and some of the things they do at night when they sleep and in their lucid dreams, and I was just blown away. I couldn't believe that this was real. And I actually was pretty skeptical about it, but I decided to do more research, so I just started digging and digging online. To my surprise, there's a whole host of books written about this topic. And so, needless to say, I was extremely excited. So I read about a bunch of different techniques and sort of got a consensus idea about how this process happens. I went into my room, I put myself through this process, and to my absolute shock, I woke up in the middle of my sleep and it felt as if I was being pushed into some kind of tunnel. And it was a tunnel that was sort of made out of like white noise that you see on a TV screen. A lot of black and white lights kind of zooming this way. And in addition to this tunnel, there was an extremely loud noise that sounded kind of like being in a jet engine. It was kind of like being in a tornado or a hurricane with this extremely loud wind noise. So I was kind of disoriented for a second. I had no idea what was going on and I got a little bit afraid. So I kind of held myself back for a second and then I realized, hey dumbass, this is exactly what you're trying to do. Why are you being afraid? Step into the tunnel. So I sort of just, kind of like I would sit up in bed, tried to press into the tunnel to pop out of my body. I didn't really know what I was doing yet, but I thought that this might work. So all that this did was it made the tunnel noise a lot louder and it made the tunnel a lot more bright, but I didn't actually go anywhere. So I ended up waking up, laying in my bed, just absolutely blown away. And I thought, oh my gosh, I was so close, I'm gonna try again. And lo and behold, I woke up again in that tunnel, hearing that jet engine noise, and I tried again to press into it. I spent about what I would think is 30 to 60 seconds trying to press through this tunnel of light, trying to pop out of my body with no luck. And so eventually I just sort of gave up. But I wasn't unhappy at all because I was blown away that this even happened. Because one thing you hear a lot about is how long it takes people to learn how to do this process. So everyone has a little bit different method of astral projecting, and I'm gonna give you my specific 8-step formula for how I reliably induce these astral projections. But I wanna tell you the two most critical factors that are universal across anyone that knows how to astral project. You absolutely must have these two qualities nailed down before you go any further. And those two qualities are desire and fearlessness. Desire is absolutely critical when you're learning how to project or lucid dream, because if you don't really want to learn how to do it that bad, I promise you it's not going to happen. You have to be excited about this. You have to desire it. The more intensely you can desire it, the more likely it will be to happen. And that was the key for me on my first astral projection experience that I just explained, was that I was absolutely beside myself with excitement. I had spent about 3 to 4 hours reading about this online, and I was blown away that it was even real, first of all. This isn't something you need to go to school for. You don't need to go to a certain location to do this. You can do this anywhere. You can do it right now after you finish watching this video. And so that made my excitement all the more extreme. And then the second thing is fearlessness. If you are afraid to astral project, you will not astral project. Any of these fears and myths around astral projecting, like, oh, what if my consciousness can't get back inside my body? What if I get attacked by evil entities? Any fears like this will guarantee that you will not project, because this is a process that plays out subconsciously. And so your subconscious mind is taking these cues to know whether or not this should happen. This is a very delicate process. So if you are not really excited to do it, and if you have any fears about it, you are gonna waste a whole lot of your time and energy trying. So make sure that before you attempt any of these 8 steps that I'm about to give you, that you have those first 2 aspects nailed down. So without further ado, this is my 8-step process on how to astral project. Step 1 is to choose the right time. Now this is absolutely critical to your success because, like I said earlier, this is a very delicate process. All the pieces have to be aligned just perfectly in place, and it starts with the time of day that you choose to project. Now I want you to think about your brain as a filter for consciousness. Pure consciousness itself is infinite and omnipresent, so it is experiencing everything simultaneously. So if consciousness wants to have an individual experience, it must project itself into a filter, and that's exactly what your mind is. So we need to tune this filtering mechanism and dial it into just the right frequency so that consciousness can actually project out of it and into another dimension. And the way to do this is to make sure that you're trying to project while your brain is in the right wave state. So the least effective time to do this, believe it or not, is at night while you sleep. Because every night when you go to bed, your brain is exhausted from the day. So it is ready to just nosedive into REM sleep. And this is the worst time to try and project because you're not gonna have enough conscious awareness to actually have an experience. So you wanna wait about 3 to 5 hours after deep sleep to try this process while your brain is coming back up into the higher states of awareness. There's a certain wave state that your brain achieves as you come out of deep sleep, where the delta and theta waves are primed for you to astral project. And so I've tried every time of day possible. I've tried doing it while I go to bed at night. I've tried waking up at 3 a.m. I've tried doing it in the middle of the day. And by far the most successful method I've found for choosing the right time of day is something called the waking back to bed method. The waking back to bed method means that you wake up in the morning, preferably early, 6 to 7 a.m., and you stay awake for 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe you go have a glass of water, maybe you go to the bathroom, and after 10 or 15 minutes, you're still kind of groggy and sleepy. You go back to bed and try to fall back asleep. And now your brain has had enough sleep and has enough energy to keep you more conscious for this process. Because again, your consciousness is astral projecting every time you go to sleep, but you are not conscious for the process because you're in REM sleep. So this makes the waking back to bed method the perfect opportunity to project. Step 2 is to make sure you are very comfortable and that you are alone. Anything at all that disturbs this process will of course ruin the process. You kind of want to make sure you're alone because you don't want to risk anything disturbing you. You do not want to know how frustrating it is when you go through this process and you finally induce an astral projection and then somebody walks in the room and wakes you up right as you start. It is the worst feeling. So make sure you're alone and make sure you're laying in a very comfortable position. A lot of techniques say you don't want to be very comfortable because you want to make sure you're kind of awake and not totally asleep, but the waking back to bed method kind of nullifies this idea. And on top of being comfortable, it helps tremendously to have a pair of these and a pair of these. You want to be able to block out all the light you possibly can to help induce this sleeping state. And you want a pair of headphones to at least kind of drown out some of the background noise of cars driving or neighbors or whatever else. Or for step 3, which is to play binaural beats. Now there's a lot of different binaural beats to choose from. You can find these on YouTube, you can find these on iTunes, but I've always personally used a meditation app called ANANDA, which I'll put a link to in the description below. This app is amazing because it gives you full control of the experience. You can choose the time duration you want the beats to play for. You can choose the background sounds. You can choose the music. You can choose the volume of the actual binaural beats itself. You can customize all of these settings to your preferences. So I highly recommend this app, but at the very least, you want to be playing some kind of binaural beats when you're starting out. The reason for this is because binaural beats are these wave states that were discovered in the 1950s by Robert Monroe. And what these binaural beats do is they play these wave sounds that help induce your brain into that state of theta and delta waves that primes you to astral project. So if you want to learn how to project as quickly as possible, I highly suggest using binaural beats. Step number 4 is to use visualizations and affirmations. Now this is where the rubber really starts to meet the road. Now these steps are very important to do correctly because you're trying to induce the state of body asleep, mind awake. And these visualizations and affirmations help you tremendously to do that. So the affirmations that I would repeat in order to sort of prime my subconscious mind to give me an astral projection is I would say something like, I realize that I'm dreaming. I realize that I'm dreaming. And I make sure to always put my affirmations in the present tense because you need to be very specific for your subconscious mind. If you say something like, I realized that I was dreaming, it's not going to give it to you. Or what most people do, I will realize that I'm dreaming. That's putting it in a future tense and your subconscious mind only knows the present tense. So make sure your affirmations are in present tense. Visualizations, for me, are even more important than the affirmations. A visualization is basically anything you do in your mind to try and heighten the 5 senses. So there's an infinite amount of ways you can do this. You need to figure out whatever way works best for you. Some people imagine themselves jumping up and down on a trampoline so they can feel the sensation of bouncing. Another popular one is imagining yourself going down a roller coaster ride so you can sort of feel the fluctuations in gravity. But for me, the most effective method was to simply imagine a baseball in my hand. I played baseball in high school, so I could really bring that idea to life in my mind. I would feel the baseball with my dream hands. I would rub my hands over the baseball. I would feel the smooth leather. I would rub my fingers down the red laces. I would throw the baseball up in the air and catch it and feel the weight in my hand. I would throw it to an imaginary catcher. I could bring all these sensations back to life in my mind. So I would just repeat this process and make it as real as possible while allowing myself to drift off into sleep. And that brings me to step number 5, which is to fall asleep as excited as you possibly can. Now this is sort of a delicate step because you don't want to be too excited or you won't be able to sleep. But what you do want to have is sort of this mild excitement or this anticipation, because what it does is that this tells your mind that you are fully anticipating that this experience will happen. And this is a very powerful vibration to send to your subconscious mind. Because again, if you have any doubts or fears about this process, it isn't going to happen. So excitement is the exact opposite of that. So expect that it's going to happen and be excited about the idea of it happening. Because I can tell you that it really is one of the most incredible and exciting experiences that you can have. So you absolutely should be excited about it. Step number 6, and for me the most important step of this process, is to look for hypnagogic sensations. Now hypnagogic sensations is a fancy word that basically just means all of those audible and visual sensations and flashes that you start to have as you are heading into this projection. Now, when you have these start to happen, whether that's a sound you hear or a visual image that appears, take this as a thumbs up that you are heading in the right direction. These are what I call signposts that what you are doing is working. Now, the tricky thing as you're learning to project is to not get too excited about these or to get too freaked out by them. Because a common one that happens is that you will hear somebody say your name. Your brain is just sort of firing off audible memories at this point, which it does every night as you fall asleep. Some of us have had this happen while we're falling asleep, where we hear someone say our name and wake up. This is nothing to be concerned about, but just know that it will sound extremely real, as if someone is standing right by your bed and saying your name. Usually it'll be your mom or your friend or something like that. On rare occasions, it might be like a creepy whisper, but just know that there's nobody there, it's just your brain making sounds, and you need to stay calm and continue doing your visualizations and affirmations. Now, this is a critical point for me in the process, because what happens to me is that I hear a very loud, high-pitched ringing noise. It's the same high-pitched ringing noise you hear sometimes in your ear that your friends can't hear. It sounds like this. So when you hear that, that's also a hypnagogic sensation. So what I learned to do very quickly is to actually focus on this noise. And now one of the big steps here is wearing earplugs. If I fall asleep while I wear these earplugs, I will almost 100% of the time hear this noise. I don't hear it very often when I'm not using them, and I definitely don't hear it when I'm using binaural beats. So that's where this ANANDA app comes in very handy, because I would program it to go for about 10 or 20 minutes and then shut off naturally. And then I just have my earplugs in, which are drowning out some noise and creating that buffer, which allows that high-pitched ringing noise to be heard much easier. So when you divert your attention to this ringing noise, it will quickly become extremely loud. And what I found is that it'll go from very quiet to jet engine loud in about 10 to 15 seconds. And the first couple times I did this, it was kind of terrifying because the noise is so loud that it makes you feel like your eardrums are going to explode. But you have to know that you're not actually hearing this noise with your ears. You're hearing it through your pineal gland. It is a sensation being created by your mind. So you have nothing to worry about. Your eardrums will not be damaged. Nothing bad's gonna happen to you. Continue to focus on the noise and make it as loud as you can possibly stand. And once I would do this for about 10 seconds, I would move into the next stage, step 7, which is to roll out of my body. So when you're in this state, you will feel your body. You will feel your hands, your legs, and in fact, a lot of times you'll feel your arms floating or your legs floating. And this screwed me up many times in my initial experiences because I would think that it was my actual leg or my actual arm moving. Yo, dude, what are you doing right now? I'm trying to project, bro. Am I being abducted by aliens? But if this happens, again, remain completely calm. It's not your actual arm or actual leg that's floating, it's your energy body that's floating. And this again is a signpost that what you're doing is working. So ignore the sensation that your leg is floating off to the right or your arm is floating up above your head and just continue to do what you're doing. It's just your energy body that you're feeling. And in fact, this means that you've already projected your consciousness out of your body. The trick is that your consciousness is used to hanging out in this specific space-time location, which is your body. So you have to do something that tells your consciousness that you're going to travel away from this location. And so what I would do now is something called the rolling out of bed method. Now there's many different techniques to popping out of your body, but for me this was the most successful and easiest technique to do. You need to try and create the sensation that you were rolling out of bed and falling onto the floor. I would literally cross my arms and barrel roll out of bed. Preferably you want to do this on the side that you're closest to so that you can fall right out of bed. Everything about this feels just as real as your physical body does. So you'll feel like you're laying in bed, you'll feel your body and everything, but you need not to be afraid because you're not going to roll onto the ground and hit your head. It's going to be your energy body that rolls out of bed. You don't want to try to roll out of bed too early or you could actually ruin the process and wake yourself up. So the way that I would always know when I'm ready to employ this technique is when I would be focusing on that jet engine noise and it would become louder and louder, and finally, it would come to a complete silent halt. When you do this, you're now free to travel around and explore. One of the questions I get asked the most is, how will I know when I'm out of my body? Like, how will I know when I've actually done it? My answer is always, you will absolutely know when you've done it. There is no mistaking it. When this happens, you'll immediately feel kind of like you're floating. And this is when you'll start to feel the energy body limbs going up or down or left or right. And when you reach this stage, you are ready to leave your body. And that leads me to the final step, step 8, which is stay calm and don't freak out. Everyone who gets to this stage the first few times invariably ruins it right away because they go, I did it! I popped out of my body! And then poof, you pop your eyes open and you're awake again. Consciousness wants to stay in your body, and so you have to give it enough of a reason to stay out of your body. So what you want to do is remain calm and aware. Don't allow yourself to get too excited because that will wake you up. But you want to make sure that you stay very aware and engaged with your surroundings because that's how your consciousness knows that you want to stay out of your body. Now, I can't tell you what this will look like when you pop out of your body. Me personally, when I first started doing this, I would always pop out into this sort of gray, dreamlike atmosphere. And from here, it's up to you to know what to do to start creating your environment or to project your consciousness to other astral realms or dimensions. But again, I'm going to get into all of that stuff in later episodes. So that is my exact 8-step blueprint for how I project on a consistent basis and the exact formula that I used the first time I ever tried to project. So take this method, try it out, drop a comment below if you do, and let me know how your experiences went. But just remember that this is my particular formula which works for me personally. And you're gonna have to fine tune it and figure out as you go what methods work better for you and what methods don't. And that's all a part of what makes the process fun. In upcoming episodes, we're gonna talk more about specific techniques and methods you can use. We're gonna talk more about the science of what astral projection actually is, and I'm gonna share with you guys some of my personal experiences, which I think you'll find pretty cool. So that being said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next episode, and until then, happy projecting.